All right, so I have two articles for you today, and they are both the absurd logic of transphobes. One is an absurd logic of why we should ban gender affirming care from everybody. Um, Everybody trans, that is. And the second article is a classic example of TDS, trans derangement syndrome. I mean, I do get that in my comments. Someone will only comment, the only reason for this person to be on my channel is to, how should I put this, protect women, even when the video that mentions trans people has nothing to do with trans women, or locker rooms for that matter, they just have to zero in on those issues because that issue lives rent-free in their brains, or just simply this idea that even if I'm having an article that has nothing to do with trans people, hey, are you going to discuss this issue which has absolutely nothing to do with the fact that the person is trans and just the fact that I found a trans person who isn't a good guy? As if that affects all trans people. So yeah, transphobes are very, very weird. It's like they've built their whole existence around hating a group of people, and sometimes a subgroup like just trans women, and completely ignoring the fact that trans men do exist. All to say that, like in my previous video where I'm talking about how respecting trans people makes them less suicidal, and it's like, me, I can't call them bad things, so I'm not going to call them what they want to be called. Okay. Nobody is saying you cannot say a slur. Nobody is preventing you from saying a slur. Just because there may be consequences for you to say that slur, that just because you do not want to suffer the consequences does not mean you cannot say a slur. Just means that people will probably not like you. So you're crying because you're not more popular, because if you had your druthers, nobody, even fewer people would like you. Like I said, trans people and bigots in general are just so weird. But anyway, to the articles. The first one, Florida sues leading medical groups for supporting gender-affirming care. And their reasoning is just bonkers. But let's get to the article. The state of Florida is suing several leading medical groups for following the scientific consensus that gender-affirming care is safe and life-saving for transgender youth. Republican Attorney General James Uthmeier filed a lawsuit Tuesday against the World Professional Association for Transgender Health, or WPATH, the Endocrine Society, and the American Academy of Pediatrics, accusing the groups of supposedly violating the RICO Act. This is the act that put people like Al Capone away. This is what you use for gangsters. This is not what you use for doctors that are treating their patients. I can't wait to find out how they think that this is RICO. By pushing discredited clinical guidelines as evidence-based standards of care to sell memberships. Memberships in fucking what? Okay, first off, discredited clinical guidelines. Discredited by whom? By the very people who hate trans people? I mean, it's amazing how people refuse to accept that reality doesn't comport to your feelings. Aren't you guys the same? I mean, this is Republican, so isn't your party the facts don't care about your feelings party? And yet, so first off, not discredited, and again, to sell what memberships? Do you think, like Donald Trump, that Democrats want to make everyone trans? Because that's literally not how this works. I mean, do you agree with Trump that that you don't feel good one day and so we're going to give you gender affirming care and change you to the opposite gender? No, again, that isn't how it works even for those who are gender fluid. That is literally not how any of this works. So, it's just as bonkers as I thought. The lawsuit bases the majority of its claims on the 2024 National Health Service report by Hilary Cass. Oh my God, her again. The discredited report, which incorrectly stated there is no good evidence for gender affirming care. And like I mentioned yesterday on my video on, respecting pronouns and that it makes trans people less suicidal. We have evidence that gender affirming care works. It's, are mistakes made? Yeah, there are people who find out either in the middle of transitioning or after they transitioned that what they were feeling was wrong, that it turns out they weren't trans. But that's not the fault of gender science. I mean, mistakes are made in all sorts of medical fields, so all kinds of scientific fields. That doesn't mean that discredits the entire field. It could be malpractice. But again, that doesn't discredit the entire field, even if the doctor you went to exhibits malpractice. That's just not how this works. The report was immediately debunked for dismissing evidence from over 100 studies that found the care is beneficial by using discredited metrics and theories, while also ignoring the countless other high-quality studies that have findings in support of the care. And of course it does. Just like all transphobes, they only concentrate on the studies that they think benefits them because they so desperately want reality to comport with their hate. I don't like this group of people because they make me feel icky. So I must desperately find someone who comports to my reality. Some data that comports to my reality, because I just cannot accept. I'm so desperate to be right and have my version of reality be correct that I'm going to ignore anything that I don't like. That is not how science works. Not at all. I mean, and these discredited studies, these are other transphobes who finagle things so they can get to the conclusion they want, which again is not how science works. You don't start with a conclusion and reverse engineer things so you get to that conclusion. That's not how this works. You start with a hypothesis and you test said hypothesis, and either it's true or it's false. But it's a hypothesis you test. It's not, I want to find studies that agree with me, agree with my conclusion, because I'm too damn lazy to do work, or I so desperately don't want my reality to be busted. So, anyway, it is not just the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Medical Association, the American Psychiatric Association, the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, and the World Medical Association and the World Health Organization all agree that gender-affirming care is evidence-based and medically necessary not just for adults, but minors as well. Several studies demonstrate that depression and anxiety is alleviated in youth when they socially transition and receive treatment for gender dysphoria. Many other longitudinal studies show that gender-affirming care vastly improves quality of life for people who identify as transgender. Out of 55 peer-reviewed studies, not a single one found that gender transition has negative outcomes. Now, for those who don't know what longitudinal studies are, it just basically says instead of me conducting my own study, I'm going to research so many studies, in this case 55 peer-reviewed studies, and see what, as a whole, what their conclusions come to. Florida's lawsuit also claims that youth identifying as trans was a rarity a decade ago, and that gender dysphoria diagnoses have skyrocketed in recent years. It blames this social contagion on social media, smartphones, a lack of in-person interaction, and other societal ills. Okay. If you go back in time and look at the instance of left-handedness, which I am left-handed, you will see a similar arc. It just means that people feel more comfortable about coming out as trans and getting the care that they need, because people aren't going to kill them simply for existing. It does not mean that there are more people who have gender dysphoria. It means that they're more willing to acknowledge it and get the care that they need, because the scientific community is is better prepared to take care of them. So, no, this has nothing to do with being a social contagion. That sounds very much like, what is it that douche nozzle calls it? Oh yes, rapid onset dysphoria. That's not what's happening here. Just because you are incapable of understanding that better diagnosis and better treatment increases the statistics of this condition. In this case, trans, it could be left-handedness, autism. Again, it's not because more people are getting it, in this case, autism. It's just that we have better diagnoses, we have a autism spectrum, so we're not just diagnosing those people who are nonverbal. So it's the same thing with being trans. There's better treatment. People are more willing to go to therapy and find out that they are indeed trans, as opposed to suffering in silence because either there isn't treatment options or there are just simply people around them who are just hostile to the idea of being trans. So, no, it has nothing to do with society unless you're talking about that society is less bigoted, that they are more accepting of the fact that trans people exist and there's better treatment. One of the trans people's videos that I saw recently, well, I shouldn't say recently, it was a few years ago, why he did not want to go through bottom surgery is because he wanted a real penis. You know, not a micro penis. He wanted a penis like what cis men have, which is fair. So he never went through bottom surgery. I mean, maybe someday the surgery will be better and he will, in fact, get bottom surgery. But there's all sorts of reasons why people do not get the treatment. It's expensive, they can't afford it. They aren't aware that such treatment is available. That's becoming less and less likely. Gender clinics exist. Gender affirming care exists. People are more accepting of trans people. That's why there are more cases of gender dysphoria. Not because there is this social contagion, that there's this rapid onset gender dysphoria. It's the fact that more people are comfortable with acknowledging it and getting help for said dysphoria. Anyway, though not directly referenced in the lawsuit, the language mimics the so-called rapid onset gender dysphoria hypothesis, which claims being trans is a trend and has long been debunked as junk science. Because it so fucking is. I don't know if they get into it, but basically the idea is that a bunch of trans kids forming a group, and there's a cis person, and suddenly that cis person is trans. It couldn't be that hanging around trans people made something click in their brains that they are in fact trans, or just the fact that they sought out this friend group because they were questioning. No, it's because hanging out with trans people makes you trans. Right, it ranks up there with if you hang out with a gay person or touch a gay person, you'll catch the gay. It's just so stupid. Anyway, the entire theory is based on a single poster abstract in 2017 by Lisa Littman, who herself has admitted that it is not a formal diagnosis. Well, at least she admitted that. Poster abstracts are often published when the material is not only too weak to be a journal article, but of insufficient quality to even be accepted for oral presentation at a conference. In other words, it already is a bunch of bullshit. Now, they probably still have these poster abstracts available because, there could be more evidence that comes down the pike. But in this case, no. A 2022 study in pediatrics found that out of 91,937 adolescents in 2017 and 105,437 in 2019, the total percentage of those who identified as trans decreased from 2.4% in 2017 to 1.6% in 2019, which would not support the social contagion hypothesis. it's almost like it has nothing to do with that. It's just people spreading fear because, oh my God, trans people exist. Trans people gather together in groups because, oh my God, trans people can be friends with other trans people. And a cis person one time found out that she was actually trans, or he was actually trans, and that was after hanging out with trans people. So obviously, they caught the trans. It's like people don't understand how anything works and get easily scared. It's like, are you afraid of your own shadow by any chance? I'm serious. How can you live life so afraid of something that is not a thing? I could understand if we lived in an age where knowledge wasn't as readily available. But we have knowledge readily available. Even without the internet, we still have knowledge readily available. Why are you freaking out over something that isn't a thing? Researchers concluded that ROGD should not be used to restrict the provision of gender-affirming medical care. The lawsuit also claims these feelings usually disappear after youth reach puberty. This is also false, as a 2021 survey involving 28,000 trans adults in the U.S. found that only 8% had ever transitioned in their life, and over 62% of those who did only did so temporarily, citing social stigma. So basically, if you live in an area that is openly hostile to trans people and you transition and your family and friends and community all just dump on you because you're a freak or whatever, then they're more likely to detransition. But it's not because a mistake was made. It's because they were like, I just can't deal with this right now. Maybe they go on to transition again later when they got the hell out of Dodge. But while they're in a shitty situation, they have to pretend that they are the gender everyone thinks they are. A separate 2023 study in the National Library of Medicine found that over 82.5% of those who detransition cite external factors such as pressure from family and social stigma. So that is the end of that article. So let's get to the absolutely bonkers. She's cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs and has TDS. In this case, it stands for Trans Derangement Syndrome. And that, of course, I'm talking about Nancy Mace. Because she, just like J.K. Rowling, are like a dog with a bone. They are incapable of having a thought that doesn't involve trans people. It's like they built their whole identities around being anti-trans, and it is just bizarre. Anyway, so this article is titled, Nancy Mace investigated for bad behavior at airport, blames transgender people. Seriously, what the hell? I mean, nobody made you act like a privileged little princess at the airport because you were late, and because you were late, your security detail wasn't where they should be, because how the long are they supposed to wait for you, you privileged fuck? All right, from accosting a constituent in a makeup store to berating TSA workers as they were denied pay during the federal government shutdown, Nancy Mace seems to be making profane public outbursts a habit. Actually, I've heard that friends and family are like, she needs an intervention. The U.S. representative from South Carolina was recently found to be at fault for an October incident at the Charleston International Airport in which she turned a minor miscommunication into a profanity-laden spectacle that left staff visibly upset, according to an airport police investigation report first obtained by the Washington Post. God dang it. The report concluded that Mace berated airport officers and Transportation Security Administration staff, and after her security vehicle was a different color than she was originally told, calling them fucking idiots and fucking incompetent. Mace said at one point that she was sick of your shit and complained she was not receiving special treatment despite being a fucking representative. And you know who doesn't lose their shit like that? Pretty much everyone else in the house. She also, one of the things she yelled at is she wouldn't be treated this way if it was Tim Scott. Yeah, because Tim Scott doesn't act like a little Miss Prissy who feels like she's entitled to everything because she has a little bit of power. Anyway, now Mace is not only claiming that airport's police did file a fictitious police incident report, but that her reaction was also somehow justified due to her fear of retaliation for her anti-transgender views. If you're so afraid of your views, of people retaliating against you, maybe don't berate the people who are supposed to provide you security. Just a thought. When pressed by Fox News host Maria Bartiromo about what happened, Mace deflected that when there's a security breach, one mistake can have devastating consequences. I'm sorry, do you think a trans person is going to dirty their hands by trying to kill you? I'm sorry. If you look at the people who've been violent, who've been attacking Marjorie Taylor Greene, who attacked Donald Trump, who attacked, there was one more. Oh yes, who killed Charlie Kirk. All on the right. I'm not entirely sure where you're getting this idea that a trans person or a trans ally is going to take time out of their day to kill you. Here's the thing, Maria. We have to take our security very seriously. If you're conservative, if you're well known, if you fought the transgender community like I have exponentially in the wake of Charlie Kirk's public assassination, the death threats, the amount of political violence, the celebration of the killing of conservatives is deeply disturbing. And this is the person who killed Charlie Kirk, even though he was in a relationship with a trans person, grew up in a gun culture and grew up very Republican. So you're again assuming that bunch of people who haven't grown up in said culture and haven't been told that you take care of your problems through violence are somehow going to become violent against you. Are you that desperate to have an assassination attempt against you? Or to actually be assassinated? Are you that desperate to be a martyr? Because again, the people who perpetuate these things grow up in this culture which is the conservative culture, the Republican culture, definitely MAGA. So, again, no. Marjorie Taylor Greene said horrible things to AOC. She said horrible things to David Hogg while he was still in high school, I might add. So, technically a child. Was Marjorie Taylor Greene ever in danger of someone trying to kill her? No. Not until she went against Donald Trump. Then all his followers, faithful followers, started doing that. So, no, Nancy. Why are you so worried about a side that isn't trying to do shit like that? It sounds like you're explaining some kind of behavior, Bartiromo responded. What I'm asking you is, what happened? Mace again alleged there was a security breach, though she did not elaborate. You were the only one in the freaking airport except for you and your security. I'm not sure where the security breach happened. When asked if she will be suing the airport and American Airlines as she threatened to, Mace said that she has drafted that suit. Oh, goody, I'm going to get the popcorn. Mace claimed that security wasn't there, but 2 officers interviewed for the report said that Mace often arrives to security escorts in different locations or vehicles than originally stated. They added that she is rarely on time and that this is often exacerbated by the fact that their communication is often relayed through multiple staffers, as the Congresswoman appears to have high personnel turnover. Yes, I've heard that she is a bore to work with. Now, you can't whine about bad security if you can't be bothered to get to where you need to on time. Because Secret Service, other security agents rely on punctuality. If you're going to pull shit like this, then don't be surprised if you don't have your security. Because they're not going to wait around all day for something that may or may not happen. They just can't do that. They have other duties. The incident isn't the first time Mace has publicly berated private citizens. When asked by a voter in April if she would be hosting more town halls this year, Mace screamed at him, "Fuck you!" And people on the left are absolutely fucking crazy. As she acts like an absolute right-wing lunatic. But it's the left wing that are lunatics and fucking crazy. But no, let's act like a crazy person while accusing the other side. What is it with this Republican Party lately that every accusation is an admission? This is completely off topic, but I recently read in ProPublica that the very thing that Trump wants everybody of his enemies to be charged with, which is mortgage fraud. You know, this idea that you declare more than one property your primary residence. He did in the 90s. So again, there is literally nothing that these people accuse the left of that they haven't done themselves. It is just maddening. It is bonkers. It's like, how can we have a functioning democracy if one side is completely lost the plot? I mean, it is just crazy that these people are in positions of power. How is it that we have crazy people in positions of power? It is just unreal. Anyway, that is the end of that article. So, I hope you, like me, didn't lose any brain cells, because it is very tempting for my brain cells to commit suicide reading shit like this. It is just both articles. It is just so crazy how transphobes have to justify their existence. It's like, why can't you just go about your life like a normal person? Why are you obsessed with trans people? Go outside and touch grass. Seriously. You really, really need to touch grass. You are way too online. Go outside. Hell, do what I did today. Shovel the driveway. I mean, she's in South Carolina, so that's never going to happen. And the Florida Republicans aren't going to have that either. But still, do something. Rake the lawn. Mow the lawn. Rake your driveway. Literally do something. Anything but read the toxic crap online and fall for it. It's just maddening. So anyway, that is the end of this video. And with that, I will see you guys in the next one.